billions, billion, trillions, trillion, million, billion, 400 billion suns, billion, trillion, million, trillions of orbiting snowballs, billion, trillions, million, billion, millions, billions, million, million, billion, 4 billion-year-old tree. Tens of billions. I have trillions, billions, trillions, billions, trillion, millions, millions, billion years, 100 million. It took nature hundreds of millions of years to evolve a bacterium, and billions of years to make a grasshopper. Billions, trillion, billion, billion kilometers from the sun. Saturn 1.5 billion, Uranus 3 billion, and Neptune 4.5 billion kilometers. Billions, billion other galaxies, each of which contains something like 100 billion, billion, tens of billions of years in the far future. Billions, million of them. Millions, or billions, billions of G's. Billions, millions, billion, tens of millions of degrees. Billions, millions, quadrillion, billions, billions, trillion,
Can you hear me?
Yes,
I don't hear you.
Sorry, muted up.
This is weird. It says we're live. It says 12 watching now.
Yeah, it is.
Normally we have some.
I backed out. I went back in. It's all good. Cheers.
So let me say, today was crazy. What I meant to do was to advertise that, you were Troubling Tribune was going to be on the show, which I was super stoked about getting you on. I've seen you talk on several streams, and always great stuff. I caught you on one of Sean's Kingdom in Context, and I catch you on Melodome quite a bit. And I watched your last debate with David Weiss, not against David Weiss, but you and Dave had on a guy, I can't remember his name. That was a fun one. I watched the whole thing laying in bed. He had some issues with a family member. Close. I know you know what I'm talking about. The guy, I can't remember his name. Jacob. I think it's Jacob.
Yep, Jacob, but we affectionately refer to him as a Joel. Typical space believer. Not quite as insulting as heliosexual, I feel. But yeah.
Man, so how did you? First off, man, welcome to the stream. I won't call it a show. I'm not organized enough yet. I'll just call it a stream. But how did you get into it? What other people might have heard, but maybe there's guys in this particular channel that don't know much about you. When did you get involved? How did it happen?
That's an excellent question. So obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, because I've only been around for public scene for about a year now. But for those who know me, my personal friends and family, they know that I've been into the flat Earth for a very long time. I was trying to flat smack people back in 2013, 2014, whichever it was. It's a long time ago now, but I seen one of the first videos, admittedly to come out on it, which was Matt Powerland's, realer photograph. And that was like one of the first things that set me on the path. I don't remember looking back if he had claimed to work for NASA or not, but he had showed, how he was making planets, all this stuff, and there's no way that the average person, you or I, is going to be able to all the tax money going to why can't we get better evidence? You start digging into this whole um, flat Earth rabbit hole, which obviously kind of starts off with NASA, fake moon landing, the easier to get behind stuff, right? It's easy to see that we didn't go to the moon, right? Even if you don't believe in the flat Earth, right? It's like, oh, the government doesn't tell us the truth about everything, and there was incentive, right? We were going to war with Russia, Cold War, red, white, and blue, hoorah! We got to get to the moon. So yeah, they have every incentive to fake it. We can get behind that. But, extending that fakery to the whole entire model of the cosmos where we live, that's just too far, and where, a lot of people have different places where they draw the line, but kinda seems like it's a bit of a funnel in a lot of ways, but we can get into that in a bit.
Yeah. I got in around, I started looking in 2015. A little bit different. My mom knew ahead of me, and she brought it up. She kept bringing it up, and I said, "Mom, look, if you keep talking like this, I can't let you see my daughter, right? Like, I'm afraid you're going to corrupt her, and she's going to come out like dumb, right?" So I've been on both sides, and she kept on saying, "Well, just prove me wrong, then prove me wrong." And I didn't even want to entertain it. I was like, "This is ridiculous. I'm not even going to." So finally, one day, I said, "There's a million ways." I remember I said, "Rock, we have photos of her." She said, "Send them to me." So I went to send them to her, and sure enough, she'd come back and go, "That says it's an image. It's not a photo." And then I'd start looking deeper and deeper. And by 2017, I was full. I was, bringing it up in other streams I was on. I wasn't doing a flat earth stream, but I was doing some jujitsu streams, and I was arguing with people then. But yeah, it's crazy looking back. I was one of those guys. I am proud to say that I don't remember, I have no recollection of ever trolling anyone, right? Like being a globe troll and going out. Like I never looked to insult anyone. But I can understand how they can feel the way they feel, right? Because it's such a crazy idea that they won't even entertain it. Their brain just isn't capable of entertaining. And had I not been forced to try to save a family member, I would have never entertained it, right? Like for me, it was about trying to help my mom. But so switching gears, it's funny because I've watched from time to time I watch Melodome. For me, it's all about free when I have time. I don't have time to interact. Typically when I am watching, I'm laying in bed. But see on there quite a bit. And I have a friend in Kentucky who I converted. He saw I post on Facebook all the time, and he reached out to me and he's like, "Man, this is kind of crazy, right?" And I'm like, "Bro, just look into it. So the guy, first we were friends growing up. Well, not good friends, but he knew who I was. We lived in the same neighborhood, and we had some close friends, mutual friends. But I kept answering his questions. He'd call me and go, "Well, how would this work then?" And I'd answer his questions. And eventually he became a flat earther. But out of the blue, we haven't seen each other in years, but he just, texted me the other day and he goes, "Hey man, you ought to look up this guy named Troubling Tribune." And I said, "Yeah, I know who he is. Yeah, we've chatted, in the same stream, and I've seen him on Melodome." I just thought it was pretty neat though, that he recommended you. So here's a guy in another state. It's a small world we live in.
Absolutely.
So his name is Andy Vanover. I don't know if you've ever interacted with him, but
I'm terrible with names, so there's a good chance that I have and I don't remember. And if that is the case, I apologize. It's going to happen a lot, though.
I'm same. Well, I hate to tell you this, but I have a hard time believing you have a bad memory. you have a good recollection from what I've seen. You can remember some experiments and some details about experiments that it's weird because the stuff you'll talk like you're on the levels of how well a brain functions. Witsit being on the extreme end of having a really good functioning brain. You have a really well functioning brain. I've seen you quote some things that I can't like things that I've seen that I know I've seen that I know, right? But I just couldn't quote. And I've seen you. So I know you have it's very easy to see you have a very good functioning brain. I have some brain jealousy there.
Well, to be fair, I do set myself up for success sometimes, right? If I know that I'm going to be going into a debate situation, sometimes I'll go and refresh myself on some quotes. There's nothing wrong with studying up, making sure you're nice and sharp in the game.
But yeah, and I like again, like you got a great demeanor. You got a great, I thought it'd be really cool to have you on. You're one of the dudes I thought that'd be a cool guy to chat with.
I don't like, and just to throw myself out there just a little bit, I'm a Sagittarius, so I have like a big ego that I always have to check. So I really, um, I do, but I don't like being put on a pedestal. And I think that honestly, what I do is something that anybody is capable of doing. It's just a matter of effort and care, and I think that everybody is putting in um, that amount of effort or care into something in their life, right? It's just not always the thing that needs to be cared for, unfortunately. But everybody's on their own path.
Where we differ, and it doesn't matter to me. We could hang out, go out and have dinner and be great friends. It doesn't. I don't hold it against anyone when we have different, faith views and faith. Are you? Would you classify yourself as atheist or agnostic or like somewhat religious or like kind of like not 100% sold, but maybe it's where do you put yourself there?
That is another awesome question as well. So I've kind of went through the myriad of different beliefs. I did mainstream Christianity back when I was younger. I fell out of that just because it was very shallow and didn't really dig deep into anything. I was just kind of believing it because I was going to church. My friends were going to church, and that's where we went to hang out. So basically Christian in name only. And you hear, obviously, growing up in school, hearing the media, you hear all the mainstream propaganda against, Christian religion in general, where you kind of get the idea that um, it's not really something that's that intelligent to believe in. They pass off that, at least on the surface level, right? I think that there's layers to all this. So as a kid growing up, I get a very dumbed down explanation of what the Bible is. And then I get thrown into church with people who are, um, it really seems like a big sales pitch, just to be honest, because they're playing up the music, they're driving the emotions really high, and then they pass around the offering bucket, and they're like, "Put the dollar in the box," as Eric Cartman would say. And that just really didn't sit with me the right way. I'm thinking, what the heck does God need with my money? And, that doesn't make sense. But anyway, so I fell out of that. I start looking at like meditation and just mainstream hardcore new age spiritualism because that's obviously what was being promoted. It's just what you find next, right? I'm not going to make any bones about it. I was asleep, right? So I'm kind of just going through the motions of this stuff. And I go through Spirit Science channel, super duper funny, right? It's so inaccurate.
Is that the little cartoon dude with the? I was hooked on that, man. I went through all his videos. Drumvalo Melchizedek, right? Wasn't that one of the
There was so much of it that was just completely complete.
I watched all his stuff. I was huge. Yeah,
it was entertaining. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
there's a reason why the channel is popular, but it's one of those things where, just like with the Bible, I think that, just to cut right to the chase, I think that there's truth, and then I think that there's lies mixed in, insidious like a serpent, if you will, lurking in the grass. And so, and it would have to be done this way, right? If you're any type of clever, if you're going to deceive the world, right? You're not just going to do the ultimate blatant lies. I mean, you will have a few of those, but you're going to have to tell some truth to gain some credibility. And what better way to do that than to rely on some intrinsic truths, right? Like, let's tell people that killing is bad. Yeah, everybody can get behind that.
Yeah.
Let's tell people that taking that stealing is bad, right? Everybody gets that. We'll figure out another justification for war. That's fine. We'll tell people um, basically they everything to obey the authority and to keep to yourself as much as possible, which some of that stuff is absolutely fine. Like we totally agree on the don't kill, the don't steal. Basically, the non-aggression principle is really, really good, but that's one of those obvious truths. So I feel that there's obvious truths weaved throughout all these religions, not just Christianity, but through Hinduism, through Buddhism. Um, Basically through all of the mainstream stuff that you see, and especially New Age spiritualism, there's a ton of stuff weaved into that as well. But I think that they all break down when you get past all the BS and, like, the just made up stories and try to get to their interpretation, you pretty much end up with the story of Hermeticism, which people quote all the time and don't even realize it. That is where "as above, so below" comes from. That is where the law of degrees, right? Like, we're just smaller versions of bigger things. That is
Yeah.
Hermeticism.
Yeah.
There's male and female and everything, right? The principles. That is also Hermeticism. And a lot of the stuff is, plain on its face, but then it can also get more intricate than that, like the law of vibrations. Like, everything has a certain, vibe to it, if you will, for lack of a better word. You can kinda tune into that vibe, and if you have, good willpower, strong willpower, you can actually alter a vibe, slowly. Here's an exercise that people can try where if you ever heard ringing in your ears for one reason or another, it's a auditory hallucinations, what the mainstream, explanation is for it. I really don't know what it is exactly, and I don't care. What I do know is that if I focus on that ringing in my ear, I can change the pitch of it at will by just focusing on it. And that's
Hmm.
something that I think is pretty profound. But anyway, I would consider myself mostly a hermeticist, but even that I think is not gonna have the full truth behind it just because that's put forward, and it's like layers of deception and everything. So another way to look at it is a sales funnel. I, I used to work in sales for I know I'm monologuing right now, so I'll wrap it up.
No, it's all good. Go ahead.
I used to work in, sales, particularly vacuum sales and then, water sales. I've also done some telemarketing as well, and you get really, really familiar with the idea of funneling people to a close, to a conclusion, right? And the way that you would do that is that you would do it piece by piece, evidence by evidence. That way you don't ever overwhelm somebody and you let them feel like they're making their own, decision through the process. It's a very common, very well-known sales tactic, and it's actually the way that just about every marketer is doing it at this point, right? It has to be subtle, it has to be repeated though also. So we just have to keep putting it out there, and we have to funnel you to a conclusion. So I think that what's going on with, a lot of the conclusions in the Truthiverse, not that they're necessarily wrong, but I feel like some of the stuff is timed release. It kinda seems weird how the flat Earth just got really big all of a sudden, and then they put the brakes on it. "Okay, this is blowing up heavy. Let's pump the brakes. Let's bring them into Congress. Let's make it public that we're bringing them into Congress at that, and then, let's fizzle it down a little bit, and then who knows what's gonna happen in the future." But I do think that it's interesting how we'll come to these conclusions, and everybody's kinda got, like, a path of, like of things that they'll accept. So, everybody wa at first probably believed in UFOs. They were like, "Oh, UFOs are definitely a thing. The government's, lying about a lot of things, and one of those things is UFOs." And then you get into it, and it's like, "Okay, well, yeah, there's UFOs, but they would never brainwash people, right?" Oh, and then you find out about MK Ultra, then you move up the ladder, and so on and so forth. There's actually a pyramid that came out called the Pyramid of Conspiracies, and I actually covered it in one of my old Tribune shows. It was really funny how they had the base tier, which was like, these are things that, are admitted to have happened, right? Conspiracies that are admitted to have happened. MK Ultra, a few others were listed, I can't remember off the top of my head. Goes up one tier, things we have questions about. UFOs, simulation theory. You hear people talking about simulation theory and stuff like that. Moving on up, now it's like leaving reality, and then, they had things like Bigfoot, Mothman, a few other really, that seemingly out there things, right? Maybe not so much if you look into it. And then at the very top, right, you'd be surprised what you see at the top. It's going to be Semitism, Zionism, flat Earth, literally at the very top, and they call this point at the top of the pyramid the anti-Semitic point of no return. They're basically just trying to paint this blanket term that anybody who believes in the flat Earth is just an automatic racist. It means hateful things for people.
Well, there's some ties that are really difficult to understand, right? Like the parties that are here mentioned there at the top are definitely somehow interwoven, right? Like there's they come up, there's no way around that. So that's weird. Yeah. So it's weird. I went down the Hermeticism road. I was hooked on the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. And I remember I used to sit and read it, and I would audiobook it sometimes. And I think it says in there that if you read it like 6 times or 12 times, I think it was 6, that it would unlock itself. And I used to try to astral project and astral travel, and was never successful. But this was like 2014, 2015, around the same time I was doing that Spirit Science channel, the Drunvalo Melchizedek stuff. But, and I went heavy down, Anunnaki road, right? I was a big, Zechariah Sitchin fan, and I knew everything there was to know about Anunnaki, and it's crazy. It's crazy the path I've taken. But let me see. Shifting gears, I did have a few questions, so let's talk about. I see we got effed up world, and I wish I could shout out to everyone. A lot of people. There's like 57 people in, so I can't shout out to everyone. But I see Thomas Morgan and Jesse, a buddy of mine I works with, and Joe, and
I think,
man, if you all are.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I do think it's interesting how we're kind of like flipped on the sides of the path there.
Yeah, yeah. Like we have the same backgrounds, just in different orders.
Yes,
that's really interesting. Now, you and Melodome have some super sharp. Who's doing your all's graphics? I'm just curious. Like, man, do you do that yourself? I mean, your intros and outros are awesome, and same with Melodome. You have the same guy doing it.
So it's actually a mixed bag. Now, for the most part, FMX is doing the bulk of our editing. So, and people who are looking for editing work, I definitely recommend hitting him up. He's very approachable, but he has been pretty busy, so you do have to bear with him a bit. But he does have great graphics, great editing. Melodome does a lot of the thumbnails for his own channel, as well as some of the background graphics. And then I did the graphics for my intro and outro, and the music is, excuse me, and the music is ripped from the copyright free section of YouTube. So sounded great.
Nice, yeah.
It's very hype. I chose it because it's like, man, if I'm going to do a show late, I better get people's blood pumping a little bit.
Yeah. Now, you're doing a show at 8, so you got a back-to-back tonight. Who's your? Just let people know in case they get bored later. What's your back-to-back?
Oh, nice. Yeah. So we're gonna go right into Fight the Globe is a segment that we started where we dive into the Discord trenches, and it can be very interesting. Discord offers a whole different audience, people that possibly have different arguments for us to address. So it's going to be myself, Shane St. Pierre, which is a very knowledgeable flat earther, who kind of put this thing together. And then we also have Alan from Space Audits, another incredibly knowledgeable person. So
I watch his channel too. Yeah,
very
sharp dude.
very, very good stuff. Not as popular as it needs to be. We need to blow up some of that information. So I definitely want to have him on from time to time. He did one of my Tribune shows with me a few weeks back, and was fire. So definitely go check that out. He's got great info. We're going to be taking on an entire server of Discord normies. So I'm going to be streaming that on my channel. Shane will be streaming it on his channel as well. So take your pick. It's going to be a good time either way, though.
Man, all right. So some flat smacking, basically.
Oh yeah,
Discord flat smacking, if we want to call it that. Yeah. So Sean, any talk now? When I watched you with Kingdom in Context, Sean had mentioned you should come back on. You all should do a second. Has there been any talk about that yet, or?
Not just yet, but that's coming very soon. I'm gonna reach out here.
Yeah, yeah. Keep me. I'll definitely try to follow that. I watch a lot of Sean. Um, he's an asset to the flat Earth community. Definitely reaching Christians out there. And you got to admit, whether you agree with him or not, that dude has a brain on his shoulder, right? He's like an encyclopedia, man. That guy, he's going to be good at whatever he does. What a phenomenal.
He's definitely the guy I want to have the conversation with on the some of the specific refutations, admittedly offered by the Torahic Jews, right? So you can say that people make the claim that, well, that's from the Pharisees. But that's actually not necessarily true. The Pharisees would be the ones who were practicing the Talmud, from what I've seen, and then also claiming to practice the Torah. But really, there is a whole nother section of Jews that claim to only practice the Torah, and I don't think that we could consider them the Pharisees. But there's a big disagreement on, and this would be where we disagree as well on the biblicalness of Jesus, right? And it may cost me some subscribers, might not. I really don't care as long as I'm honest. So um, I love everybody from every side of the aisle, by the way, right? Just because we disagree doesn't really mean anything. Anybody who watches my channel, though, should already know that because we invite the Globers on always. So even have some Glovers supporting the channel. So we're not bigoted here. But I will say that I've heard some pretty convincing arguments at first from a channel called Bait to Phila, and I'm trying to remember the guy's name of that channel, but that's the thing that's weird. My memory is usually pretty good, especially when it comes to music, but when it comes to names, I'm literally awful when it comes to names. Faces, though, I'm excellent with. So, pretty interesting dynamic. But
When you said you had some pretty good arguments from bait to, what'd you call it? Bait to Philip?
to Phila, it means house of
Bait
prayer
to
in
Philip.
Hebrew.
Okay. And arguments on what side of the house?
Oh,
What do you
that
mean?
the Messiah was not actually, biblical, that
Okay.
the only salvation for mankind according to the Old Testament is going to be to actually do the law, as perfectly as you can. And what that includes is going to include, snuffing out, apostasy, um, at the actual rules, right? They say that if somebody in your own camp tells you that, hey, maybe we should follow, it says specifically another mighty one, but you can easily infer that to mean any other behavior that's not the creator's. And they tell you that it's better that you stone them to death with your own hand. So it doesn't allow for apostasy once you say, okay, I'm going to give this a try. So people in my position, we would be put to death, unfortunately. We would not really be allowed to question things if it goes back to the Old Testament. There is the grafting in though, so make no mistake, it's not like you have to be of the bloodline. All you have to do is agree to do the behaviors, and then you get a sin offering, and then all that's well and good. So then annually you go and you do your sin offering for the sins that you know, and then the town or the group that you're in does a sin offering for the sins that you don't know, right? Because how can you really truly repent for sins that you don't know? So that's for the priest of the encampment to go ahead and do. But anyway, so they follow these rules, and they say that Jesus is unfortunately not biblical, and they give a couple reasons why. One of the reasons would be a certain prophecy that did not come to pass. And I know that there's disagreements on the mistranslation. I'm not really trying to have the debate here because I'm still pulling
Yeah.
up some information with it. But this is just kind of the starting point of where I got some of these arguments. So that if anybody wants to learn more without waiting on me to pull it up, then you can go to Bait to Phila, which I think they just made their last video. The guy was getting older, so slow it down quite a bit. And you can only talk about the Bible so much, I suppose. So, um, yeah, it's interesting because he still believes in the Bible despite the inconsistency from the old to the new. And that was one of the things I was like, man, if they're able to corrupt it to that point, then I would just be logically disingenuous to say that it's not possible that the older one would be corrupt just because I want to believe that it couldn't be corrupted. You look into where these sources come from, and they all pass through through the church, right? We don't have a undoctored version of it, unless maybe you want to consider the versions in Ethiopia, which I'm looking into. Right? These are things that
Yeah.
one of the reasons why I wanted to have the conversation with Sean is because apparently there is more to the story that was not edited, not altered through the church fathers and priests and organizations that I am not super privy to. So
Yeah. That's what I like about Sean is that he seems to have the best handle on that. Like he can tell you, he knows the differences between the Septuagint and the Hebrew Bible, whatever the translation or transliteration is, or that he knows it, better than anyone I've seen, better than anyone. And that's why, like, when we first had a conversation, you hit me with a question that I wouldn't even attempt to answer because I had a fear, when I first started becoming Christian, if that's the right way to say it. I didn't want to read the Bible because I knew I was going to get to the story of Jonah and the whale, and I knew that I couldn't swallow that. Right? Like I was like, this is all in the back of my head, right? Something I had to pick apart. And I talked with a friend of mine, and I was like, man, how do you get by a fish, eating a whale eating a man and him staying alive in the belly for 3 days, right? But later I come to find out that nowhere did it say Jonah lived in the whale. That's just a common misnomer that people have done that intentionally. And Jonah in no translation does it say he lived. It just says he was in. And then I listened to, it might have been like I also listened to like Ken Ham and Kent Hovind. I think it was Kent Hovind, and I think it was him that said, it was probably that he was dead and revived, right? Like brought back to life. And then all of a sudden it became more realistic to me because to think of a guy breathing in a whale, right? So anyway, my point is, as a first time reader of the Bible, I'd be in no way I wouldn't even try to have an argument with someone or a debate. But I do believe, to me, a creator just seems blatantly obvious, right? Like
blatantly,
the evolution's like, to think to think I didn't doubt evolution once, right? Like it was just like, oh yeah, evolution, right? Like we got dudes in white coats that knew that. And now it's the dumbest thing in the world, right? Like how did you get from a fish? What was it? Then a salamander, and then a salamander became a monkey, and then a monkey ape to human, but we still got apes. So like none of it makes sense. And I know that's that's kicking a dead horse, but the fact that I ever considered evolution is hilarious to me.
the thing that I find really interesting about the conversation, and this goes through after looking at the various world religions, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert on all of them. Of course, that's a mammoth of a task to be an expert in even one of them. But I will say, it seems like they're telling the same story, just from slightly different interpretations, slightly different
Agreed.
points of view of the story.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that really got me thinking. If I was looking at it objectively, even if I was looking as if the events of the Bible were true without the interpretation of the events of the Bible, trying to strip that out, the interpretation of it, right? And when I look at that and I compare it to the Sumerian story, it ma
Numelish. Yeah.
it does make, so we have the god, Yahweh, or, however you wanna pronounce it. Everybody has a different pronunciation these days. But they compare that to the god, Enlil, which would
Yeah.
be the one who, like, created this realm and then
Yeah.
assigned us whatever task. Now, maybe the task wasn't necessarily to farm gold. I don't really know about that, but the idea that we were put in a certain place, right? The Bible says we were put in a place, the garden, and we were supposed to be the stewards of this place, right? So we're naming the animals, um, you know, basically being shepherds, if you will. And they tell us that, okay, well, I say they, but someone, God, if you will, tells us, hey, all this food's good except for this food here, right here. That's going to be the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and you're not supposed to eat of that. If you do, you're going to die. Good enough, right? Okay, sure. Um, would that really, on that face, before I move any further, though? in the trutherverse, this day and age, if an authority came to you, right, and told you, "Hey, uh, everything's good, but this thing right here, that's not gonna be good," right? Would anybody here really take it on blind faith, or would we test it, right? And the thing is that even the act of testing it apparently would be a act of defiance to God. So we're kind of at a place where it's really hard to untie our hands, because if we are dealing with the righteous and just God of the universe that is testing us, then we're about to fail this test, right? Because we're not supposed to test the fruit. But everything in us, and I'm talking about us today, right? And you can make the presumption, well, they're completely different worlds. We live in a fallen world now, and the world wasn't fallen then. We don't know that. We have no ability to know that. What we do know is that there were some people with absolutely no knowledge placed in a area where they were supposed to tend. They then were told by something in the garden to that they could gain the knowledge and that they weren't going to die, and they go ahead and test it, and they gain all the knowledge. They don't die in that instant, so it kind of seems like maybe God was wrong in that instant. I know that there's a interpretation where it's like, no, God just meant that death would be introduced into the world. um, but that's I think that that's just an interpretation. I think that a real threat would be, if you eat this, you're going to die, and that's what it sounds like he's saying. And the serpent's just saying, no, if you eat this, you're not going to die. You're going to know as you're going to know good from evil. And then you read through. Granted, this is with the interpretation I have now. You read through Genesis, and God said He gives the curses for when they ate the fruit, right? But when He gave the curses, one of the curses was not from dust, because from dust you were made, from dust you will return. That was after He said the curses. He's basically saying, to my interpretation, that while you're alive, you're going to be, instead of doing what you were going to do, now you're going to till the ground. All right. And you're going to do all this BS and sweat, and it's going to be hard, until you return to the ground, because you came from dust. Now, we didn't not come from dust when we were first created. That wasn't one of the curses that we all of a sudden became from dust. No, we were always from dust, according to the scripture. And God specifically says, or Enlil, whichever interpretation you want to go with, says that to dust, because you are from dust, to dust you will return.
Well, so on these things you're talking about, I do have my own beliefs and interpretations, and not arguments, because these are I love talking about stuff like this. And what I'll go back to the first thing, and I'll say that, so people have brought that up to me, and they're like, well, why would God do that? And personally, I think He would. I think it's the logical thing to do. All right. So you have gods, or Elohim, which God sits on a council, it says in the Bible. So I don't know if it's angels sitting on there with Him, or there's gods, then angels, one God, or the angels, the gods. This is all unclear from everything I can understand. But the gods, and or possibly the angels, knew about good and evil. He created man, and we didn't. And supposedly man could live forever as dust, came from dirt, but we could essentially we had a body from dirt, but it could live perpetually.
But where was that? And this might be in one of the other books, but I mean, where was that in the scripture that we had an eternal body from the get go? Because I thought that we had to get a new eternal body in order
No,
to be able to live forever.
So that's from the new covenant, right? I mean, that's from that's in Revelation. Shoot, I can't quote the verses. I don't know, but that all comes from the fall, right? Like from us having to go through, from our choice of choosing to know good and evil. I think that God knew what we were going to. This is just me speculating, but if God is omnipotent, omniscient, and all knowing, all powerful, He would know the choice we were going to make. But it's still free will, even if He knows, because He just knew what our free will choice is going to be. But He basically made us as kind of pure and not knowing about good and evil, and gave us the choice. Well, He didn't give you and me the choice, and this is unfortunate that we have to suffer the choice that our most distant relative lives. But arguably, you and I would have made the same choice too. how how could you turn down, like, imagine an angel who was an adversary of God. He's called the adversary. Satan is the adversary, and 33% of them waged war against him. If you subscribe to the Bible, um,
Well,
you would want to know. You would want to know what good and evil is. Like, especially if another angel is saying, and you don't know what death is, so you can't even fathom the concept of death. So now this angel comes to you and goes, "Don't you want to know about good and evil? You'd be like gods. It's the only thing that's holding you back, right?" I think, and he's saying you surely wouldn't die. What God? So the interpretation about the same day. This is a misinterpretation from my understanding, because it says in the Bible that for God, a day is like 1,000 years, right? And Adam died at like 930 years. Noah died at like 950. So none of them made it to 1,000 years. None of them made it to one of God's days, essentially. So that's my interpretation there.
I forgot exactly where the 1 day is 1,000 years comes from initially, but just the way that I kind of see it, to let people in a little bit more, and the whole idea that God's on a council kind of feeds into the idea that the Sumerian idea may also have credence, right? Where again, it's just like with the NASA stuff, right? Except for the NASA can be debunked as known liars, so it's not a bad analogy actually. But it's like when you have two stories that are plausible, and we're looking at them from the distant past, and we're trying to determine which one we like more, right? And the thing is that in the Sumerian story, and I know a lot of people are already familiar with it, but Enki, which a lot of people would consider Satan the adversary because he convinced the other godlike beings to turn on Enlil, because Enlil was saying, no, these humans need to stay ignorant and stay enslaved. Um, but he comes down and he's like, no, because apparently and this can get into it's hard because there's a whole bunch of stuff added in, right? So I hesitate to add stuff in that's not actually in the original translations. There are some that say that we're actually from Enki's DNA and things like that. And I'm like, how would the Sumerians even have a concept of DNA? So that just doesn't make sense to me. But in any case, Enki thought that it was messed up that we didn't know stuff, and then came down and said, "Hey, this is some stuff that you can know." And when you take all that stuff out, like all that kind of interpretation, you just look at it blankly again with like you have warring factions of spirits. You have a one faction that says you have to live this certain way. This is the proper way, which it's very nuanced, right? I'm dancing because there is a proper way. There's definitely a right way, I
Yeah.
think, to live. Um, but I don't think that I don't necessarily think that the Bible tells us that just because it has a few of the things right.
So I'm a fan of the Enuma Elish, and I've read it a few times. It's a great. It only takes, I want to say, I don't remember the last time I read it. I mean, 2 or 3 hours to read. It's not a long read. Um, it's a really good. It's got a lot of missing chunks in there. There's a Sumerian version. There's a Babylonian version. I forget which one is the Enuma Elish, but there's another name for the other version. Um, and if you've never went down Zechariah Sitchin's road, which is the Anunnaki, that all comes from the Enuma Elish. All of it, all the Anunnaki, the whole story of the Anunnaki. It is like the most detailed version. It's like starting with the Enuma Elish and then finding every tablet you can out there. The only difference is he's saying that it's the exact same telling. He's just saying they didn't came from heaven. They came from space. They came from Nibiru. They came from the 10th planet.
Right.
And um, yeah, so I was, and for did you ever listen to a guy named David Vose, or someone else who goes down that road is Trey Smith? But David Vose has a more, where Trey Smith leans on the Bible, David Vose leans on the Sumerian and Babylonian tellings, but has a great knowledge of the Bible.
I will say, I think that symbolism, symbol, symbolism gets missed on when they throw out the things of planets, especially for flat earthers, because we know that the planets are BS. I think that the planets are clever ways to hide spiritual intentions. And so when you get into when you look at like the Kabbalah, and you look at the things that talk of like the spheres, right? They're not physical things. They're their concepts, right? And the reason why they're spheres, I think, is because awareness is spherical from the observer point, and that's just how it is, right? But I think the 10th planet, probably indicates it's something spiritual, not necessarily like a literal 10th planet. Maybe that would be a misinterpretation. A lot of people get this information from channeling, right? So how reliable can it even be, right? We're
Yeah.
talking about uh, dealing with stories from people who are just getting messages from things, and that's why you have to take it with a grain of salt, right? It's like
Yeah.
they could very well be, very evil trickster entities that have selectively given information to confuse and, lead the masses astray into something, completely abominable from the initial intent. It's very possible. But the thing that and this is personal bias, right? Is that when I'm looking at it, I see a group that was trying to give us information and then another group that is demonizing the group that is trying to give us information. And typically, in any other scenario in real life, we would look at that scenario and we would say, okay, the people trying to give us information are probably uh are probably more altruistic, probably have the better motivation than the people who just want to keep things hidden. If the people were just trying to keep things hidden, they would just be upfront and tell us exactly why it has to be hidden. Like that's just what we would expect. But that's not what we get when we're dealing with the creator. And maybe that's just because we're too ignorant to be able to handle it, but I don't know. The, elite definitely seem to think that we're too ignorant to handle any information.
Yeah. So you brought up channeling, and I'm just curious. What instantly popped into my head is, ayahuasca, DMT, microdosing, psilocybin. Uh, did you ever go down any of those paths, or do you have any friends that went down it, or what are your thoughts on?
Have, awesome. I have, quite a few stories, down that rabbit hole, but I don't wanna advocate, for any illegal substances on your channel, of course. I will say that they definitely open up a door, and that can be very positive or very negative depending on your mindset. And this is something that can actually be controlled. If you want to talk about like weight training, like things that are very, very challenging, people have a lot of hard time, especially younger people, finding self control with their emotional states. They get angry really quick. Um, Quick to fall into apathy, and that's something that's actually a direct result of lack of discipline, and this gets exacerbated when you're on hallucinogens. So if you wanted to, like, take a shortcut, then, isolate yourself, take some hallucinogens, and, just deal with the monster that is yourself on a crash course, and, it will be traumatic, but you will most likely come out on the other side a better person if you were ready to deal with yourself. If you weren't, you can actually send yourself into a perma trip, which I would consider hell. You can literally send yourself into hell. So take with caution.
I did in 2015. I was trying to get hold of ayahuasca. Like this is before I was. Um, I wasn't on. I didn't have any kind of face on YouTube or anything, and I was just doing jujitsu. And I wanted to do one of these. Everyone I was watching London Real, and Joe Rogan was talking about it, and I was like, I want to do this. I wanted this spiritual. I wanted to have. I wasn't Christian at the time, and I was looking for a deeply spiritual, you know, connection, right? So I thought, okay, ayahuasca or DMT, right? But luckily, when I reached out, you can either go to Peru or whatnot and find a shaman, or you can order it online. But at the time, everyone wanted Bitcoin, and I didn't have any Bitcoin. They didn't want to do it with Western. I tried to do it with Western Union. I tried to make it happen, but Western Union wouldn't approve my transaction. They like called me and go, "What's this for? Who's it going to?" And so I did microdose some psilocybin. I got some mushrooms, right? And one night, my daughter's in here. What? Oh, okay. All right. We'll fix it later. All right.
People are getting so triggered in the comments.
Later.
It's
Later.
funny.
Okay.
I obviously mean no offense, and to answer Boo Ranch directly, I don't believe in hell like the Bible
Ushi, shut the
describes
door.
at all. I was using it in the metaphorical sense, right? Like hell could be the place that you send yourself when you're in a very, very negative place, not like the place of fire and brimstone. That's actually not even biblical. Uh, That's actually like one of the first tier Christian stuff that I think that people should be aware of. If you are a Christian and you're reading the Bible, you should be aware that hell is not actually biblical. It's Sheol. It's the place of sleep where nobody has any knowledge of anything, and you wait and rest until the day of judgment comes, where the land and the sea give up their dead, and you stand before judgment, before the Creator. Where if you did right and obeyed the laws or followed Jesus, whichever interpretation happens to be correct, then you will be free to continue to be on the land with the great golden city with the 12 names of Israel on it, in heaven on earth. Or you will be dashed apart like the potter's vessel and thrown into a lake of fire where you will be destroyed, and the smoke of your ashes will burn forever.
That's deep. Um, so skipping gears now, I'm just looking at some. I did make a few notes, so this is probably the most prepared I've been. Let's change gears a little bit. When you started going down Flat Earth Road, how many people disowned you? Do you have good friends that like literally just won't? That you know,
Uh,
you're now too dumb for them, right? Like they think you're an idiot.
Oh yeah, dude. I actually had one friend that was a real shame too, because I thought that he was pretty smart. We would have intellectual conversations about like the wrongdoings of the government and stuff. But the thing is, and that's why I say it's a sales funnel. He was stuck on the part that leads you into communism, so he could only go so far down the rabbit hole. And then he was like, "Nah, it's too much. Planes go around the Earth. How do star trails work?" And yeah, I could never really. But then again, this is like super early on, so, well, we don't really talk anymore. I have quite a few friends that, were good that I've distanced, that have we've created distance, and it's actually my fault because of my lack of, I'll call it salesmanship, right? My lack of personality, being able to approach people properly, and my need to inflate my own ego to know that I was right about this thing, really just made me incessant about it. So I would just constantly try to bring up the flat earth, constantly try to flat smack people. Anytime NASA or space was even mentioned, I was all over that, dude. Uh,
But isn't it? I mean, I know this is going to offend some people, and I know I can think of one person. Um, I'm trying to think of how to say this without offending anyone, and there may not be, but isn't it harder to hang out with people that aren't flat earthers now? Like it's like you get around them, and it's like you're just muzzled on 90% of what's important to you. You know what I'm saying? It's like for me, I'd say 90 to 99% of what is important in this world is all hingent on flat Earth. So it's like to have any conversations whatsoever, it's hard, right? It's because you're just sitting here thinking, you know what do I talk about? You know, it's like nothing matters, right? Like, do you realize we're at war right now? It's like so a flat earther's walking around knowing that we're in one form of a war or another, right? Whether it's the government at war with you, whether it's a spiritual war, there's a war going on. And then the majority of people, who knows what percentage that is, we don't know, could be 70%, could be 50%, but could be 80%. I don't know. But the majority of people are walking around and they have no idea they're being warred against. They just think that, oh yeah, shots, sure, give them to me, whatever you say.
yeah, please, 5 of them in the same night if I
Yeah,
can, please.
yeah. And my daughter, she's one, give them to her too.
Oof. Shudder at stuff like that. Lots of horror stories that I've been hearing that just really wrench my heart, and that was actually one of the main reasons. I say it was ego too, but I mean, it really is at the end of the day because my ego also made me feel the need that I had to do something about it. And one of that somethings, of course, that gets brought up is all the effed up stuff that happens to kids out in the world. Is just I can't even really talk about it. It's so
Yeah.
bad. It makes me so upset.
Yeah. So you went to the bottom of Pizzagate
Oh,
hole.
dude,
Yeah.
I was before Pizzagate even happened, I already
Yeah.
knew about that stuff because of
Yeah.
Alex Jones, right? I mean, people call him a gatekeeper if you want, but he does reveal a lot of good stuff.
There.
And, I just remember being, a young man without really any direction in life, at being so angry at what was happening in the world. I was just so very upset about it, and, it was very dissatisfying, right? But it was weird because sometimes before people actually start acting on things, actually get depressed, right? And start falling into inaction, right? Or paralysis by analysis, as some would say. You get overwhelmed with the case of accounts, everything that's going on around you. You're like, I don't even know where to start. I can't possibly take on this mammoth anyway, even if I wanted to. So it's best to just shut down. I better just roll over and die and not become emotionally invested in anything that's out here because this place is hell and everything's going down the poo poo. And I think that that's just a demoralization tactic. I've been to the bottom of the barrel, to say the least, but I think that sometimes it does take that to really figure out that there is something that you can do, and you owe it to your soul to do something, right? So don't use anybody who does use religion as an excuse to not do anything. Um, I think you're missing the point. I think that in no way was it ever intended for us to just be lambs to the slaughter.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got to join the fight. I don't care. It's like, and you have, anyone who's came out publicly and talked about this is, they've taken up arms and joined this fight. And I said, it's hard, man. It's hard. You get, I not to keep harping on it. It's just part of my life. I do jujitsu, and I let everyone know in the school. We have students come in. I'm sure I'll lose students over it, right? Like people come in and they're all excited. No, you've been doing jujitsu 20 years, and like you're a flat earther, like are you? So instantly I get discounted, right? He can't be that smart, right? He's like got to be dumb. But I'm vocal everywhere except for my 8 to 5 job, because I would absolutely, when that comes out, it'll be another Brian Mullen story, but that's the time I'll be done working. So the time someone goes out to say I'm ready to retire, but I'd probably just go full time into flat earth, and just enjoy it, just so, but yeah, I have no doubt that if it'd be the same Brian Mullen story. You'd lose all credibility in your job.
Absolutely.
And Witsit lost. He had an opportunity, from what I understood. He was getting ready to start this really great paying position, and he got, I don't know the word for it, where they contacted the employer and let him know who he was and what he was doing, and he didn't get the job, from what I understand.
I actually told on myself, unfortunately, how when I lost my water gig because I was trying to branch out. I was actually a distributor, so I had basically working with like a set price, had to build the business plan and all that, the marketing, training up the new people, all that good stuff. And I was trying to bring in another product from overseas that was going to be an add-on, because all we were offering was just some basic filtration. Definitely needed a little bit more, and we could offer that, and we had a reasonable price on it. So I was getting everything connected, and I was trying to also get it worked out to where I could provide the service to people that I was starting to stream to that would be interested, because it actually got a lot of hits. One of the first shows I did was bringing up there's a website called ewg.org/tapwater, where if you're in the United States, you can type in your zip code, pull up a full water quality report. And I almost guarantee there's not a single person that's going to pull up their water quality report and not be absolutely disgusted. We all know that the water's bad. Wait till you find out just how bad it is. So I was going to got a lot of hits off of that, and people were asking me left and right, like, what kind of filters do I need to get? How do I get rid of this stuff? And so I was going to get all that situated. And when I revealed to my employer that one of the ways that I was going to be helping promote the products, they found out about my online activities, and they're like, "Yeah, we really not comfortable with somebody um, in this particular field representing our company."
That's crazy. And honestly, that's like a genius idea, because we flat earthers are the most untrusting, right? Like we're actually going to do the research, right? Like you bring up the quality of the water and tell them where to go. Everyone's going to research it. And honestly, I'd say the majority of Flatman X is in. Cool.
Hey, shout out.
It's a effed up world. Iron Horse is a whole bunch. Man, what a great stream tonight. But yeah, like your average flat earther isn't taking in fluoride. Most of them got reverse osmosis systems, right? They're not using aluminum in their deodorant. They're not, all that stuff was, I stripped 5G out of my house. I'm not, hopefully everyone's well past all that.
I do want to mention one thing real quick because I just seen the fallacy in the comments. Iron Horse. Distillation technically is the best filtration. You are right. But I hope that it's not the only type of filtration that you're using because there are things that chemically bind to the water. And even if it evaporates, those things that are chemically binded will actually stay attached to those molecules, whatever the heck it is. I don't really care what framework you want to assign to it. It is what it is. Water has been tested after distillation. It still has certain chemicals. So I would recommend a multi-step process, but none of it has to be that expensive at all. You can do distillation combined with reverse osmosis, combined with remineralization because you don't want to be drinking dead water. If you want to take it one step up, you can spin it around to make it vortex, or you can add a little bit of electricity to it and liven it up, and that probably take care of it.
That's deep. That's yeah. I just got the RO system. I'm gonna have to look into some of the other stuff. I have heard of all that stuff, but I never put it. I didn't put that the kind of weight into it. Like I do need to look into remineralization. Um, Let me ask you: did you ever see a documentary called "Beings of Frequency"?
That
Have you ever
sounds
seen that?
familiar, but I can't say that I have.
Man, if anyone in here hasn't seen that video, it's an absolute must see for anyone who considers them a truther. I don't care if you don't like the term truther, if it's played out, it's not cool to be woke, whatever. Call it yourself what you want to call yourself. Um, Beings of Frequency is an absolute must see for someone who is a truth seeker. This is it's the best documentary I've ever seen of proof of what RF frequencies do to us. And I won't go. It's a well done documentary, and they take people living underground where there's no frequency, there's no Schumann resonance, and then they reintroduce the Schumann resonance. And they do this with several different groups of people, and they also did studies of people who live around cell towers, and that's where 99% of the cancer was. It's a really, really good documentary to watch. Beings of Frequency, I really recommend it. And Awake Souls, man, this is a crazy. This is like an all-star lineup of people in the chat. Like we need to do like a Brady Bunch style. Wouldn't that be cool to get like 6 of these people in one chat? Iron Horse, Effed Up World, Awake Souls, you, me, Melodome was in earlier, Flatman X. That would just be off the hook.
Heck yeah, I'm open to it. Legends, every one of you.
Yeah. Well, I'll do next Saturday next time. We'll do an open thing if anyone wants to jump in next Saturday. The same time, I'll do a 7 p.m. if anyone wants to jump in. But we got like close to another 45 minutes here so if anyone has some questions, I think I've asked everything I had written down. I will ask you one other thing though. 2 things. Do you have any beef with anyone in the flat earth community?
Beef.
Yeah.
Nope.
There's some beef though, right? There's beef in the flat earth community.
I don't even
Nathan
understand.
Oakley has beef with Jeranism and P Brain have beef, and Nathan Oakley has beef with Witsit, and Flatzoid Perspective has beef with it. Like there's beef, right? I don't want any beef with people, but it's pretty crazy that we're all in this, we're such a small team, and then we have to have all this dissension between us. It's like we're the most unorganized movement. It's sad.
That is some high school BS. There's absolutely no need for the amount of beefing that there is.
I know,
But
right?
sometimes, I usually don't say anything just because, sometimes people just have beef just for the entertainment value, right? And who am I to say that that's not what's going on? So I just kind of sit back and let it happen. And I mean, I won't lie, I'm pretty entertained by it sometimes. So guilty as charged, but I do stay out of the beef. If anybody has beef with me, come forward with it. We'll hash it out. I'm a pretty approachable dude.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. I mean, it was partially a joke to ask, right? But it is sad. Like it is. You do see. I watch a lot of these guys. Like I watch Flatzoid. I watch Space Audits. I watch you. I watch Melodome. I watch Level with Me. I watch or not Level with Me. Level Observer. Flat Level Earth Observer. I watch. There's a ton, right? Like there's so many good channels. Everyone puts out great content. I obviously have some favorites. Jaron's one of my favorites because he's like 80% comedian. The dude could do stand up. I think he'd do a great job as a comedian, and I just like that. I like his style more than anyone else's. David for content. Flat Earth Banjo. I like some of his stuff. But yeah, it's sad. It's sad that there's beef out there.
The chat is
What about Beyond the Imaginary Curve, Dell? Have you ever checked out any of his stuff?
I know of him. I have not checked out his stuff, to be honest. I can't get to everybody, right?
Yeah, there is too many. I watched some of his stuff, and I'm not trying to. He's very liberal with F-bombs, and I've tried to clean most of that up. But also he's got some tattoos that are really, on par with Tom Hanks's son, right? Like he's got some tattoos out there that are really, so, and he also subscribes to the Earth is going up, right? He's the accelerating disk. He argues it, right? And a lot of people follow him, and he's cranking out some accelerating upward disk flat earthers, right?
Maybe I'm just missing something on that, right? I mean,
I can't get on board. I can't. It's like
evidence is it just the begging the question, right? It's like, well, things are dropping, so we have to be moving up.
I don't know. He did some experiment with a bubble in a water, and he dropped it in something. I couldn't get any logic out of it how he came to his conclusion, but I don't know.
What can you do?
Yeah,
that's probably why I don't watch it.
Same. I was nothing against the guy. He's not the kind of guy you'd want to. He looks like the guy you'd want to avoid in a dark alley for sure. But
dude, your chat is literally killing me, dude. I'm headed to the grocery store pick up some beef right now.
It's great. You know who Awake Souls is? Have you ever been on their channel?
I've not been on their channel, but
so they go deep into Enoch, and they're good. I'm bad with names. I'm like you, but I definitely spent my share of time on their channel, and they've got a good channel. If you like going down, they're. I don't want to relate them to like Kingdom and Context. They're different. They're flat earthers as well, right? Like but they have a different model, which I'm not going to get into that. They subscribe to a different flat earth model.
Pac-Man model.
Yeah. Yeah. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that's it.
How would you know, man? There's no.
Honestly, we haven't proved without a doubt. Like it could be. Like the only thing we know is we're being lied to. That's the only thing. Like honestly, I can't say 100%. I've got it figured out. I'm confident we're not on a ball, right? And we're not hurtling through space, but it could be something we don't understand. Like I don't have a problem with that, especially now that I believe in a creator. Anything's possible. Like it's. One more question, and then we'll go into we'll see if anyone has any questions for you. What'd you think about Level with Me? What'd you think about that documentary?
The Level with Me documentary is a really great place for newbies to start, I feel like. And it is a good place for if you need a refresher, if you want to go back over the basics, definitely a good place to go. Level with Me 2 was also really good as well. I definitely recommend. I mean, they're part of the list.
So I meant the last one, whichever the one that starts off with Flat Earth Millionaire. So that's Level with Me 2. Is that what that is?
I think so.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. I was just curious what your thoughts on what your thoughts on it were. Some people, I know there was a lot of mixed reactions, and that was like the big hype in the last 6 months. So
My biggest critique would be the music. I think the music was pretty good, but there needs to be more inflection, up and downs, and pauses. That way, it can keep people more engaged. That's my only real complaint with it.
who does your music? You? Is it you, or FMX?
Well, for now, unless there's a clip that I get from FMX, then I do the music. But
Yeah.
it's not like I do it personally. I go to the copyright free section of YouTube. And by the way, this should be like a bit of inspiration to anybody out there. If you've like ever been thinking about doing a stream, but you've just been like on the fence, it's like maybe it's too hard. I don't know if I could do it. I had like no experience in this at all for streaming. I crash coursed everything. There's free resources out there for everything that you want to do. If you don't have any money and you just want to learn the skill, it's definitely out there, and it doesn't take too long. I've been helping a few people who come to me with streaming questions and stuff. 'Cause I use OBS. I just went when I
Yeah.
realized that I wasn't going to be able to get what I wanted out of Streamyard without paying. I was like, man, I'm gonna have to have to bite the bullet.
Yeah.
So,
I started with OBX, and I still have OBX, and I use OBX when I'm making videos, but for just streaming, I use Restream. But yeah, OBX it's pretty. I just scratched the surface of it. There's a lot you can do with OBX. What else? I had something else, and my memory has let me down again. So
terrible. What are you gonna do, man? We got dead time. Everybody
I
hates.
was going to say if we had any questions. So do we have any questions out there? We can look in the chat now. Now that I've asked all my questions.
While we're waiting for a question, I'll go ahead and throw out one. I'll ask my own question to you and the audience as well. Genuine question, right? It's not a got you at all. It is. Sorry, I was getting distracted by something in the chat. The question is, if astral projection is a thing, right, which would basically just be being outside of your body, right? Um, do you believe that mastering that skill would stop you from being able to accept the gift of Jesus or living out whatever interpretation of the Bible you feel is the most correct?
Um, well, I think somewhere in the Bible. So I've heard Sean talk about this. I remember him talking about this. I don't remember the exact words he used, but I think it's my understanding that that is like forbidden by the creator, right? Like astral travel is like it's like along the lines of witchcraft, right? It's forbidden, and it's a sin. And if you took it, you'd have to take up that lifestyle. So for me, it would be like even if it were real, which I from what I understand, it more than likely is. It probably is, right? Like I've heard, we had I can't remember the name of the program where we had our government. We have those guys that would astral project and go find bases and whatnot.
There's lots of them. I actually had interviewed a woman whose grandmother was apparently in those projects. One of them was Project Looking Glass, though. That's like
Yeah.
the end of the trilogy, if you will.
And so from my end, but of course, nothing's beyond the government to push an agenda, right? At the same time, they can make anything come to light, right? To make something look true. At the same time, it could very well be true. Especially you talk to a lady, she either would have to have motivation to lie, or she's an honest, sincere old lady that more than likely was involved in it.
Well, the thing is, and I never put it past somebody that somebody online, as a personality, has the capability of fabricating a story for clout. I know that the internet is infamous for the never-ending quest for clout, so I do take that with a grain of salt. But one thing I know is true, beyond the shadow of a doubt, is that I was outside of my body, myself, my own personal experience. And there are other people who are not internet characters at all, who have not done anything with the information of them telling their story of how they were also outside of their body. I've also met one of my good friends was actually one of these people that had been outside of their body, although albeit not the most reliable testimony because he did it on a acid trip. So, but there was, it was verified. I was right there sitting next to him as he was doing it, and his eyes were closed, and he was telling us things that you would only know if you could see behind us. So he had a vantage point from his point of view. He was up here above us and he was scared. He thought he had died. And I was like, no, you're breathing. You're sitting right here. You're fine. You're just having an out of body experience. Luckily for him, this was after I had had my out of body experience a year or so prior. So I was able to make sense of what was happening in the situation and keep him calm throughout it, which helped extend the experience, right? That's why self mastery is so important and why everything ultimately I feel tries to distract us from that very goal of just
Yeah.
being self disciplined, able
Yeah.
to resist, just resist the monkey brain that tells you, hey, do this, think that. Um, Put that under control. It starts with controlling your actions and then it bleeds into your thoughts. And then once you start being able to control your own thoughts, it's like there's real power in that, and I think that that's the power that the elite are really afraid of.
I tried to astral project, man. I sat there and would read and meditate on, um, Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and that was like a guide for how to do it, right? Like, and I never had any experience. I will say, I started down this road earlier, as I was mentioning. I did psilocybin once. A buddy of mine, one of my students, gave me some shrooms, and it didn't look like a lot. They were shriveled up, and it was like a little bag, and I took them. This is like around 2015, and I sat in the dark in my living room, and I was like, I still remember it all, but I got up and I'm like, I got to get out of here. I got to get out. I went to open the door, and in my door, at the top of my door, I had one of those security systems you buy off Amazon where you put the two pieces stick at the top of the door, and it just tells you, like, it dings if it opens. It's magnetic driven. I'm 100% certain, like without doubt, no exaggeration, no, I wasn't looking for it. It was just, I went to open the door and I saw electricity jump from one side to the other. I literally saw the electricity. It was slowed down and I saw the electricity jump across. And I will swear to this day that I actually saw that. And there's no way you could tell me that it was something I imagined, because I didn't hallucinate anything else. It was, I don't know. To me, it was very real. But that's my psilocybin story. So I saw electricity with my own eyes.
That's a great story, man. I have a similar story when I was on, 2 tabs of at the time, I thought it was real, but it turned out to be the research, chemical 2,5-I. Unfortunately, really rolling the dice on that stuff, by the way, totally could have died, but luckily did not. Did have a death trip, though. I, was sitting in the back, we're riding on the highway to our friend's house in Orlando, and, they're playing Pink Floyd, right? The Dark Side of the Moon album, and everything, it's kinda cool, we're jamming at first, but then all of a sudden it gets to the On the Run song, right? The really intense, really, grabs you, right? And it's the whole goal of that song when you really focus in on it is to just make you anxious, right? It's just to give you anxiety. So I'm literally, I'm telling the guys, I'm sitting in the back seat, I'm like, "Guys, I'm having a hard time, I think I'm gonna," and then I start to lose my breath, and I'm like, "I think I'm gonna pass out," and then I just see my frame of vision turn sideways. I completely clonk out, and then I see my vision separate, like static on a TV through the side, then Xing, then down the middle, then it just started all fizzled out into static and then broke off each piece of little static. I zoomed in on that, and then it became different patterns of all kinds of crazy stuff that I can't even explain. But I made it through that. I didn't die like I thought I was. I woke back up, and then it was to the lady singing um, at the end of what was the song? Time. The lady singing at the end of the time,
Mhm.
that kinda brought me down out of this death trip. We end up at my friend's house, and they have walkie-talkies, and they press a button on the walkie-talkie, you hear the bloop, and I see the sound bubble come off of this walkie-talkie and thin out and envelop the whole room, and not only do I see the bubble, I see the room color change, as the vibe changed, as people's emotions kind of changed, I could literally see the aura of the room in this experience was absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah. Now, if I hadn't had my experience, I would have a hard time rectifying your experience. But having had my experience, now I can absolutely see that experience that you're talking about and have no doubts that it happened. And that's crazy. And then the thing of it is that real? And is it something that you're unlocking? Right. And I don't doubt it that it is, right? There's no reason to maybe it is, maybe it's not. But who can say?
Christy Lee Dahl's right on the money, by the way. Two CI or 25I. I'm definitely seeing a lot of skulls in various places, and you got to be very, very careful with that stuff. You can work yourself up, and you basically just you could make the choice, unfortunately, to just leave this realm, which unfortunately would mean your body would die, and that'd be very unfortunate for all your friends and family. But to answer the other question too, from plain reality, I have never blasted off on DMT. Unfortunately, I have had the pleasure of getting to try some and microdosed it, but I have not had the full experience that, excuse me, that other people have talked about. I don't really think it's necessary at this point, to even do that though, unless I was looking for like a really big shortcut. The things that you can achieve from that, you're able to do actually just in your dreams once you learn how to lucid dream and astral project. Lucid dreaming, I've done a lot more frequently, and I've had lucid dreams where I've literally, because I stopped taking hallucinogens because I got to the point where I would always have a bad trip. There was like something that I wasn't dealing with that I guess this thing would keep trying to make me aware of, and I wasn't ready. So I stopped taking hallucinogens for the longest time, and I found myself actually longing for the experience. And one time I was in a dream. I remember walking outside my front door, seeing the most beautiful landscape out in front of me, taking a tab, and then just seeing all of that go into crazy swirls, um, with no anxiety, no panic attack at all. Was very profound. But here's the thing, and we kind of drifted way away from the thing that had like some hardcore meaning of it, which was like the astral projection, the lucid dreaming. A lot of people tell me that they don't have any luck with being able to do it, and a lot of people are going off of the same sources, right? Which ultimately does come from like spirit science, like open the door to people looking at the emerald tablets and then going that whole route. And my thought is like, how do we even know that the emerald tablets are legit? To me, that's no
Yep.
different than following,
Exactly.
Dead
Yeah.
Sea Scrolls or some guy following some tablet. It's the same exact narrative. So I do take it with a grain of salt. None of the actual hermetic methods of astral projection actually worked for me. What actually ended up working for me was nothing more than letting go of my um, fear of death completely. I did, and that's ultimately what the trips were trying to get me to see, by the way, was the fear of my own mortality. When you start tripping, if you're actually introspecting, you will start to figure yourself out very quickly. You'll start to figure out all your little flaws, all your little problems, and all your good parts too, because you have to balance it out. Otherwise, you go crazy. And I realized ultimately when I had been away from it for a while that all this was overall my fear of death, and I would have bodily anxiety over this. I would literally having anxiety where my heart was beating out of my chest. I went to the hospital on 3 different occasions trying to calm myself down from having too high of a heart rate. And they even prescribed me sugar pills one time. They're like, "Here, take these pills, and you'll be fine." And that's when I knew it was okay. They're telling me I have anxiety because they just prescribed me sugar pills. This isn't like there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just psyching myself up, which could have been a result of the 25I, mind you. It's very important to note that. That's like why I don't really recommend it, and I don't really think it's necessary to do. I just think that you can use it as a shortcut, but shortcuts usually come with consequences. The reason why you're not able to do that stuff in your dreams right now is because you have not mastered the discipline necessary to be able to handle that stuff. So when you throw yourself in the situation where you would need the discipline, guess what? You're now walking on thin ice, super thin ice. And some people do fall through. It can be pretty traumatic.
Hmm. Yeah, I've had Yeah, as I stated, I never had any success with that. Today, I don't try to do it, just because of my religious views. But I don't. It doesn't bother me if someone else does, you know. But yeah, I never had any. When I was trying, I had no success, but I did try.
The reason why I harp on it quite a bit, and this is like my own religious bias, but I've kind of taken it away from the moralistic aspect of it, in that I think less that it has. Now, this doesn't mean that I don't think we should be good people and strive our best to, basically live as perfect as we can, whatever that means to you, right? You should hold yourself accountable. You should hold yourself to a high standard. You should even try to hold yourself to a standard that you may feel is unattainable, right? Just because it keeps you pursuing for greater things. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But when I think about what's happening in raw reality, I think that the mechanics have less to do with morality, and they do have more to do with, I mean, the best way I could put it is muscle memory, right? So if you've never done push-ups in your life, right? But you're a really good person, do you think that you're going to be able to do push-ups? The answer is obviously no. Same thing with like anything working out, right? You work out anything at all. Um, that's how you get good at it. If no practice, no perfection, right? So when we talk about like spirituality, we know that there's a spirit body. There's no question about it. And we know that it's something that you can manipulate. But the thing is that most people, most of the time, are on autopilot. They don't either are unaware of it completely. So it's um trying to remember the word for it, when it's completely entropied. There's no muscle there. There's no ability for
Yeah,
control. There's no discipline. You just wander. Um, I feel that if people spend their time worrying about how good of a person they are, instead of just being a good person and then actually practicing something that can build upon that, then I feel when the time comes that you lose your physical body and all that you're left with is this spirit body, you're not gonna you're not gonna stand a chance. You're basically going to have no muscle memory, and you may be able to gain it from that point. I haven't This is one of the things that I'm, like, studying out, looking into. Maybe this is one of the reasons why some spirits, like, last a long time and why some are, like, here and then gone here today, gone tomorrow. It goes really deep, right? Spirits can break down into other things too, but that's just the process of, pressure mediation, ultimately, this physical stuff, ultimately breaking down into the less physical or into the metaphysical, and then ultimately coming back from the metaphysical back into the physical through a process, I think, of active will and thought. Where the active will and thought comes from, I think it comes from the creator, and I think it comes from us. And that's why manifestation is a thing and why these elite are able to do so much crazy stuff with this magic, right? It's like, man, it's like there's got to be something to it. And that's why they teach us in all the religions not to do it. It's like, yeah, you don't want to do this stuff. This stuff's evil. It's like, uh,
when you talk about magic, right? I don't know how many people today. When I first started looking at, when I first went deep down flat Earth, the first 3 years, 4 years, man, I was consuming so much NASA stuff, but most of it was coming from the flat Earth community. I'd say 99% of it. I wasn't going out there watching NASA videos because it was a waste of time. It's like watching cartoons, right? And I was seeing the same old people on harnesses, the same old people, astronauts going invisible, grabbing the wire. There was tons of really good finds. But here's the thing. In the last year, I've really started auditing NASA videos and SpaceX and others. But I'm going out there now consuming their content like a consumer, right? And because I figured that would be my contribution. I'm going to be the guy who continuously brings you want new bloopers, you want to go here, and I'll build a little army. That'll be my small contribution to flat Earth. I don't think it's being done today. Everything I see is just someone it's 6-year-old content someone else found. No one's really going out there auditing. I'm auditing every day, sometimes hours a day. Anyway, I don't know how they're doing it. I know it's fake. We know it's fake. Space Skylab was fake. They're doing the 500-pound weights. We've seen the wires. We've seen them go invisible. We know it's fake. I know it's fake. But the new stuff, if you were to sit down and watch the new stuff that they're turning out, it's so good. You don't know how they're doing it. You're like, wait, how are they going through? How are they doing it? They're turning corners. The camera's following them. They're going upside down. Where are the wires? That have to hit something. Like it's not obvious how they're doing it. I mean, they're on some next level stuff for sure. Potentially to the point where it's just 100% augmented reality, and it looks that good, right? Like augmented reality has gotten to a point where you can't tell it from, and that may be what it is. But luckily, there's still bloopers today. There's still bubbles in space when they do spacewalks today. On the last one, there's still very blatantly bubbles. There's still insects on that space station. There's still bugs and moths today, this year. And once in a while, they still do go invisible. So, but you'll watch 3 or 4 hours, and I understand why someone won't even consider looking. Like you could send them a video and they won't look at it because they've drinking so much of the Kool-Aid and they've seen so much of that content. It looks like it's impossible to do. It's like, that's impossible to fake. Have you seen it?
Have you seen
Anyway. Yeah. Well, yeah. Even, man, the other day for my daughter, I put on a Marvel movie. We don't watch a lot of movies like that, but I put on Dark Phoenix, right? I hadn't watched a Marvel movie in a long time, but I put it on for her, and they have this scene where the space shuttle's out spinning in space, and the X-Men go out and save them. When you see that space shuttle spinning in space, you're like, man, that's as good as anything as NASA's turning out today. Anything that's as real as anything NASA's turning out. But yeah, no, I agree with you. But what's not mimicked in movies yet? Like I could watch Gravity and see how they could do that, right? Like I can. It's better what they're doing at NASA today. They have this rule that they have to be one step ahead. It is a rule, and they are one step ahead. They'll go through the whole. Yeah.
There was an example. The reason why I brought up Gravity is because there was an example where Sandra Bullock is going in zero gravity up through multiple different tubes, and you can actually edit out in post-production the wires. Now, as far as like how the wires are going like through different things, that I couldn't tell you. That's just how they have it set up, I guess. But I know that it is possible, and that these days they're doing entire huge screens, right? Of nonsense, fakery.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen guys that at their house, they're not even working for production companies. They'll use something called Blender, and they'll make scenes that are absolutely convincing, right? Like they'll just walk to their house with green screen, and it'll look like they're in the 22nd century in the far future, walking through the streets. And they did this themselves with Blender. And I put some of those videos on my channel. So yeah, and I'm sure NASA's ahead of that. But my point is, for some of us who haven't looked at NASA videos, and that's all I do it every day. They are. I understand, man. If you look at the modern stuff they're turning out today, it's crazy. It's convincing. But we knew that 5 years ago. 7 years ago, we were saying it's gonna get so good you won't be able to distinguish it from reality. We knew that then, right? It's not like we couldn't go to space 5 years ago and all of a sudden we can, right? That hasn't changed.
Groundbreaking prediction.
Yeah. We knew it was coming. Another thing that happened is that since I've gotten deeper down this auditing rabbit hole, my version of auditing, where I'm actually auditing videos on the daily, is I got turned on to the Japanese, Italian, and German versions, those algorithms. So everything we've seen, all the bloopers we've seen are the American bloopers. You don't realize that. You don't. Like we have like 2 or 3 spatterings of like, a Dutch astronaut who drops a screw but there is probably terabytes of data. Like you could just get lost in Japanese NASA algorithms where you're seeing, and this is interesting in case you guys didn't know this, the Japanese astronauts are superstars. They're mega, mega, mega superstars. They have millions of followers. Their TikToks are exploded. Their Instagrams are exploded. Nothing like Chris Hadfield or Katie Coleman or anything like that. These are superstars. When they're not in space, they're flying around on personal jets. They're driving Bugattis. They have been elevated to a level nothing like here. Here, they could largely be unnoticed. You could be in a restaurant with an astronaut. Most people wouldn't notice them, right? Over there, and I just thought that was interesting. I didn't learn that until I fell into that Japanese algorithm. And I started going Japanese video after video, and then you end off in their own channels, and you see that you can have a US video of a spacewalk that is on NASA's channel that was released 3 years ago that has 100 views. Americans aren't watching NASA content. They're not.
Right.
Go to the Japanese side, you'll have this dude, Soichi Nokuchi, and he'll have 2 million views on his personal. It's crazy. They're super. Anyway, I thought I'd share that because it's different. It's different in
common rebuttal from Globies. It's like, oh, what are they doing? Everybody's faking their personal accounts. Obviously, so like you can't get a video and upload it.
But anyway, so where I was going with that is I'm finding tons of bloopers, tons. Honestly, they don't try as hard because the Japanese, I don't think there's a single person. I've tried to find it like a Japanese guy exposing JAXA. They don't have it. There's no Japanese Eric Dubé or no Japanese David Weiss. There's no Japanese Jaron. Doesn't exist. You see insects in the Japanese videos more often because they don't care. Like no one's paying attention. They're just looking at the dude in his hands. He's doing the magic trick and they're so sold on it. But anyway,
I think that the work that you're doing and the work that Audit NASA is doing ultimately is going to be pivotal. Sorry, I'm doing all kinds of tongue twisters tonight. It's going to be fun in the Discord debate. But yeah, I think that the work that's being done there is pivotal to getting us to the next stage. We definitely need to be taking the legal screws to NASA and at least making them produce the documents, right? Like produce what it is that you guys are spending all this money on, right? It's ridiculous. They've been in Congress before getting called out for misusing taxpayer funds. So, I mean, we can hammer in on stuff like that and, yeah, really start exposing the lies that are happening.
So I'm finding like 100 bloopers a month right now. That's like the rate. I kind of looked at it and did a little math, and I said I'm finding like 100 solid bloopers a month. Like when I say a blooper, I mean that shouldn't be there. This is a false production, right? And the thing of it is up until now, if you were looking for a blooper, most people went and grabbed someone else's content and it said Hibbler Productions or it said ODD TV on it, or it said none of those guys had source, right? None of them told you, hey, you can go get this here. No, everyone was trying to get their own glory, in my opinion. No one was trying to actually create a library where you could share it. I've grabbed a channel. I called it NASA Bloopers. I haven't uploaded to it yet. I wanted to come out of the gate with like a couple hundred. I'll probably do it this month. And then I'll keep that updated. And what I was going to do is update every blooper clipped and slowed down with like both, like have it clipped and then have it slowed down behind it. No logo on it. Anyone can free to use it. And then that will prompt content creators to go out and easily do their own 25, 50 compilation, right? So, and then people can do it and they don't have to use mine. They can do it in Italian. They can do it in German. They can do it in Japanese. So I wanted to create that's my goal, is I want to create a blooper library where anyone can go grab free content that you're not going to get a content strike for. It's already edited. You can just grab 10 this month, throw them together, put your spin on it. 10 next month, throw it together, put your spin on it, and hopefully that'll, I thought that would be a good contribution for the community. That should hopefully, um,
Oh yeah,
yeah, help it grow.
good bloopers are viral gold, right? They have a lot of opportunity. So, I mean, you're doing a really really great thing, putting those together. That's hours and hours of work, by the way. It's
Yeah.
just unreal, and a lot of it, some of the most boring crap you've ever seen.
Every other night, me and my daughter will watch a spacewalk, and she looks for bubbles, and she enjoys it. Like, I feel bad. I do. I do feel bad. My daughter doesn't believe in space. She knows it's She knows it's BS, right? She knows Earth is flat, but she's totally cool with it. We'll watch NASA videos and we'll look for bubbles. Dad, did you see that bubble? I'm like, well, let me rewind. She's got good eyes, but she doesn't mind. Sometimes I feel bad and I'll put on something for her because I'm like, man, I can't watch her make NASA bloopers every night. This is crazy. But anyway, so that's what I'm trying to contribute. I just want to make a library of freely available bloopers, and some people have reached out to me and said, hey, I'll help you. And what I said, just send me the URL every time you find one. I'll edit it down.
Nice.
So
Heck yeah, that's awesome. An assembly line, if you will. You get a good crew, and then it makes the workload very makes it minimal. I won't say easy,
yeah.
but
And let me add, if anyone ever wants to redo a blooper, like, so all the bloopers I've done in PowerPoint. So it's just, I've got them all loaded in, and I've got the source, like a lot of work. A lot of work went into it, right? But I'd be happy to give that to anyone, whether they want to redo it in English with their own spin, or whether they want to do it in German or Italian or Russian or whatever. Because I like that first bloopers. I did that my favorite 25 bloopers or something, and it's got a couple 100,000 views, right? On my channel, it's got 60, but it's probably been shared 200 more times. I've found it like 50 times on BitChute, on Odyssey. And when I started adding them up, I was like, man, it's really got a lot of views. But think of how much better it would be and how much farther it could go if other people would do it in their language, right? Like, there's so many people. Like, I'd like to see it in Thai and in Filipino and Japanese. I'd love to supply that to someone. If they just reached out to me, I'd go, here it is. Here's the PowerPoint. I'll put it here for you to get to it. By all means, take it and put your spin on it. So
heck yeah, there it is. Truthers out there, call to action. I would probably reach out to like Iru Landucci and maybe get just to get the ball rolling on another translation. That'd be epic, absolutely epic. I do appreciate you having me on, Bob. Bob or Bobby, what do you prefer?
Bobby. Most people say Bobby. Yeah.
Awesome. It is getting to be time for me though. I got to get things prepped for the next show. I try to start on time, but sometimes it doesn't always work out. So I'm gonna try to rush to get some tea made and get that thing all situated. But it should be a lot of fun. It is a Discord debate event. So are you gonna be continuing this stream or?
For 5 or 10 minutes, I'll just wrap up here. But yeah, I had a great time. Let's do it again when you get some spare time, and maybe I'll try to set up an event where we get some more people on, some more names like Joe Hill and Iron Horse. How cool!
Let me do close with this just real quick. First off, I think that astral projection, mastering your spirit body, and following the Bible instructions can be congruent, can go hand in hand. And I think that what's the wager called? I can't remember who made the wager, but similar type of wager. I would bet that it's probably best for people to learn that and practice that with the instructions just in case. Because what happens if you're wrong and you die and you don't have any control over your spirit body? That would suck. Then you really can get dominated by more powerful spirits for sure. But that's just my personal opinion. Everybody can do their own thing. It is freedom of choice after all to everybody walk their own path. Much love, regardless of what you decide to do. I will also shout out Globebusters, Miss Cami Nodell is doing a fundraiser to help provide learning materials, things like magnetic kits and things for homeschooling parents. And the way that they are raising funds is by doing the True Earth Summit. Nobody from Globebusters is presenting, I don't think, but you can still use the coupon code Globebusters50 to get 50% off on the event if you're going. And if you're unsure on who you want to support, that would be where I'm throwing my hat. That way, that funds gets put to where it can definitely go to some good use. So we definitely appreciate that. Huge shout out to Globebusters and Miss Nodell. And, what else? Yeah, shout out to Audit NASA. We're short on manpower over there. If you guys want to help out with the cause, literally, even if you can spare like an hour or 2 a week, then go ahead and head on over to auditnasa.com. I think that, Nuba has the link. I don't have it on me or I would drop it, but yeah, go check that out. You got to sign an NDA form just to keep everything on the up and up, and you guys can take part in quite possibly what is the greatest movement in modern history. A big blow coming to uh, a huge arm of the government spending, and a big chunk of the lie should come crashing down. So you guys can show your support at Audit NASA.
Cool. All right, man. Well, try to catch Troubling Tribune on his channel or Shane St. Pierre.
Yeah, Shane St. Pierre's on Rockfin only, so you won't find him on YouTube. But Rockfin, yeah, he's gonna be. It's Shane St. Pierre, and it's also on my Rockfin as well. Wherever you guys decide to kick it, it's all good. Should be a good time.
All right, brother. Well, until next time, we'll do it again. You got my email, phone number. Let me know when you get some time. You want to put down another, we'll do it. Had a great time. Take care, Skylar.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right. All right. See you,
Peace.
brother. See you. All right. So 1 second here. Man, that was a very cool dude. Glad I got to do one with him. But there's been many cool dudes on my show. Just looking in the list right now. Iron Horse is a cool dude. Jeff Cadboyce is a cool dude. Josh Sarla, sorry, I did not. I did get your message, and by the way, about the song, and I've just, man, I'm like doing 5,000 things too many that I meant to reply to you, and I will get around to it. So sorry about that. If North should watch this video, I unintentionally ghosted him last weekend where I said, hey, man, I'm going to do a show Saturday. And I didn't. I ended up working on a property that I have. And I had no choice. I just had to do it that day. So I did not do a stream, but I do want to sync back up with North. We were going down the biblical side. Is Effed Up World still in? I thought about calling Joe the other day. I'm going to call Joe, by the way. I was looking at the moon and I said, man, I need to call Joe. And I couldn't find his number in my phone, but now I have it very intentionally saved once I found it. So, did Brenda visit our channel today? Someone's mentioned Brenda, but I did not see a comment from her. So that'd just be the all-star cast if Brenda joined us too, right? From the Globe side. Yeah, too many messages to go through. Yeah, that would be cool. I hate asking anyone to put in time, but yeah, if you ever, Josh, if you ever wanted to help out with, like, whether it be a theme song or whether it be, I'm not the kind of guy who asks people for help, because if anyone else has half as much as what I've got going on, we're all so busy. It's like, I hate asking for things. I don't, but if you should ever get motivated to, or you have spare time, and you let me know, man. My intro is just something I grabbed. I thought it was funny. I didn't make it. I had nothing to do with it, but I do think it's funny. Iron Horse, I love, you're one of my favorite guys to watch on Modern Day Debate. Like, I would never miss one of your debates. I love your intros. And you sold me when you stood up and walked out away with no towel on. Like I was like, this guy gives zero. Anyway, um, you're definitely an interesting person, and I definitely enjoy when you come on the show. And I'm not going to stay on much longer tonight. By the way, I'm just kind of wrapping up because I got to spend. I did a jiu-jitsu tournament this morning. I didn't spend any time with my family yet. I haven't even seen them other than my daughter walking in here. So I'm going to try to get an hour or two of daylight with them. But yeah, if someone wants to do next weekend, I'd love to get like either Troubling Tribune and or Joe and or North and or Iron Horse and or Flatman X. I'm probably missing someone. Limitless, Awake Souls. Those are all, we could do, what's it called when two channels come together? What's that called? There's a word for that, right? When you do yeah, Joe, no, I just wanted to say, I wanted to call you the other day, Joe, because I know you were looking at the same moon I was. That's all I was saying is I wanted to call you and go, are you seeing this? It was the other day when I posted the video of the moon. I posted it on my YouTube channel, but I couldn't find your number. And it was way down in my text messages and I couldn't find it. I was scrolling through and I couldn't find it. But later on, I got home the next day and I saved it. So that'll never be an issue again. But I was just letting you know, I was thinking about you and I meant to call you. So, and Joe, you've been all over the place lately, man. I've been watching you. You were on that debate with David Weiss and Jacob and Skylar. And I watched that whole show, which was very entertaining. I could have, I'm sure most of the guys on this channel don't have a hard time. Like, 6 years ago, I could have marathoned out on Netflix or Prime, but those days are gone, right? I've tried and I just can't get into it anymore. I can't. And now I enjoy watching my boy Joe or my boy Iron Horse. And that is as good as anything on TV. It's better, right? I'd rather watch that. But that was a great one. The dude, Jacob, he's so close to seeing it, and he's so angry. And he kept calling David Weiss a grifter. He kept saying, you're a grifter, man. You're just making, and he believed that. Like, that's the thing. He believed that Dave was there and Skylar was there to make money. Like they're just there scamming people. And that right there had me gripped. It had me on the edge of my seat. It had me a little bit angry, right? Could you imagine that? Like you're out here and you've decided to take up arms and put your face out there and be denigrated and be made fun of. And then some dude is going to come call you a grifter and accuse you of doing it because there's so much money in it. Like, imagine that. And you're sitting there trying to say, trying to pull them out of the matrix. And they got their nerve to call you a grifter again and again and again. Like that would, man. But Dave kept us cool. Dave really kept us cool. And Joe was there floating in space as always. Hit me up if you're on the channel tonight and you'd like to come on next weekend. We could do a Brady Bunch, right? Maybe I'd probably cap it somewhere between 4 and 6. But if you send me an email to, I'm going to put it down here, flattalk@BobbyThompson. You don't have to have a channel. As long as you're not if you want to come on and debate, I'd probably be more of a moderator, but we'll do something like, I thought that was a really good show. I would do something like what you and what Skylar and Dave and Jacob did. That was good. So I don't care if a globe earther wants to join, but that's all I got, guys. I'm not going to drag it out. I'm going to go have something to eat with my family. And we hit 70, almost 8. I think we hit 79 people. That was pretty cool. That was a great show tonight. Thanks everyone that joined. I would love to have some of you guys come on. Some shows I have a hard time getting one person to come on. Today we had Skylar on and we had a lot of interaction from the chat. So man, if some of you guys would like to come on like 6 or 7 p.m. next Saturday, Eastern time, send me an email and I'll send you a link and I'll schedule it out. Because I'm no longer doing any work on Saturdays. I'm kind of I'm being observing the Sabbath. I'm no longer doing work on Saturdays. But that's it, Flat Family. Until next time, hope everyone stays well. Take care.